Hello, I'm Eric Curtis, Chief Operating Officer at WINTree Therapeutics. WINTree is a biotechnology company focused upon late-stage interventions in cardiovascular disease for patients in their moment of crisis. And our NASDAQ symbol is WINT. And we have a franchise of drug candidates focused upon something called SERCA2a activation. Now, what is SERCA2a and why is it important? Well, SERCA2a is a drug development target, and it's involved in the regulation of the relaxation and the contraction of the heart. And when you get these two functions working together properly, you can get improvement in pump function. And that's important in a disease state called heart failure. And so at WINTree, we're very interested in heart failure, and simply defined, heart failure means that the blood is not being pumped properly by the heart in order to have the body function the way that it needs to. And so when you think about heart failure, many of you may have had perhaps a grandparent or an older relative that had heart failure. It's very common throughout the world. There are millions of patients that have heart failure. And as you think about the way that heart failure progresses, sometimes it can become acute. And that means that the patient's symptoms have become so bad that they need to be treated at the hospital, oftentimes rushed to the hospital. Because when fluid builds up in the lungs, because there's not good blood flow and functional heart having an effective way to pump blood, this fluid can build up in the lungs, and it causes a very difficult way to breathe. So patients get rushed to the hospital, and it's an urgent situation. It's an acute heart failure. And what we see here with our drug candidates is great potential to treat acute heart failure. I'm going to tell you about our two classes of drug candidates now. And the first one is, well, the whole entire class is called SERCA2a activators. And the first class of those SERCA2a activators is called the dual mechanism SERCA2a activators. And those two mechanisms of action are, the first one is that the drug candidate works upon the strength of the contraction or the beating of the heart, to strengthen that, which is very useful when you have heart failure because your blood's not pumping effectively. And the second mechanism, which is very crucial, is the SERCA2a targeting. And in this situation, what it does is the SERCA2a relaxes the ventricles of the heart, or the filling chambers of the heart, so that in between heartbeats, they can more completely fill with blood. And so when the strength of the contraction comes and you have a full ventricle, this is a way that an optimal heart can function, and pump function improves, thereby helping to improve heart failure itself. And so we have this dual mechanism at work with a SERCA2 activator. And what we envision for the development plan is for the inpatient or the acute heart failure patient to be treated with an intravenous or an IV formulation of the dual mechanism SERCA2a activator. And when they become stable over the course of some period of time, number of hours or perhaps a couple of days, they become stable in the inpatient hospitalized environment. And then they become ready a couple of days after that to be discharged from the hospital. They can be discharged on a chronic oral formulation of the dual mechanism SERCA2a activator as well. And this would help to keep them out of the hospital, returning back to the hospital over time. So we think there's a very nice development and opportunity here for the dual mechanism SERCA2a activators to be utilized. Now, here's where the story becomes even more interesting, though, because we have a lead candidate here, drug candidate at WINTree, called istaroxime. I'll call it ISTA for short. ISTA has been through 3 successful positive phase 2 clinical trials, 2 in acute heart failure and 1 in something called cardiogenic shock, which is just a more severe presentation of heart failure. Now, ISTA has very similar mechanisms of action to the dual mechanism SERCA2a activators. And so why that's so intriguing is because one can view the dual mechanism SERCA2a activators as a potential fast follow-on to istaroxime. So what that means is, if istaroxime becomes an approved drug through the course of its drug development, it's successful when it becomes approved, that the dual mechanism SERCA2 activators could learn from those experiences with istaroxime, undergo the same similar type clinical trials, but quicker and faster and potentially less expensive because of the learnings. and move through those clinical trials to a way to be able to replace this diroxime eventually. And again, with even a more fresh patent life, intellectual property life behind it. So this could be a very attractive way to think about a portfolio of products that we have. And so now that I've mentioned intellectual property, let me update you on the dual mechanism of SERCA2a activators on that. The composition of matter patent has been granted by the European Union, and there's a notice of allowance from the USPTO on its composition of matter as well. So very good news there, and we'll continue to keep you updated on that. Now let me transition to the second family, or the second group of SERCA2a activators we have at Windtree. They're called the pure SERCA2a activators. These have a single mechanism of action, and it's the SERCA2a activator target that I was mentioning, similar to what I was mentioning before with the dual mechanism. It's that targeting of the ventricles of the heart for the relaxation to more completely fill with blood so you get a better, more efficient working heart, this time in chronic heart failure. This would be the target. And so in chronic heart failure, there is a type of disease called heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, which is very much underserved. And this would be the target for the pure SERCA2a activators in development. And the reason why it's underserved is there just hasn't been any new drugs that have been successfully developed here in many, many years. And even though it's a big portion, a big percentage of the heart failure population, just hasn't seen innovation. But we think that pure SERCA2as could really make a difference here. So that'll be one of the areas of focus that we have. And on the intellectual property side with the pure SERCA2a activators, all the composition matter patents have been filed with the regulatory authorities around the world, and that process is ongoing. So we'll keep you updated there. You can go to our website to get more information, www.windtreetx.com, and view our public filings there as well. It's been great speaking to you. Thank you.